My stepbrother stole his own college fund and framed me for it, making my entire family turn against me until the truth finally came out 6 months later. My entire family thinks I stole my stepbrother's college fund and nobody believes me when I say I didn't do it. The worst part is that my stepbrother is the one who actually took the money, but he has somehow managed to convince everyone that I'm the thief. This whole situation has torn my family apart and I'm now basically homeless because of his lies. I'm Alan, 25 male, and this mess started when my dad married Susan, 42 female, about 8 years ago when I was 17. She had a son Larry, 19 male, from her previous marriage who she had full custody of since his dad wasn't in the picture. At first, everything seemed okay. Susan was nice to me, though a bit overly eager to create this perfect blended family image. Larry and I got along well enough. We weren't best friends or anything, but we could be in the same room without any problems. We even played video games together sometimes. My mom passed away when I was 12 due to cancer, and my dad had been single until he met Susan. Mom's death hit us both really hard, and Dad threw himself into his work for a few years. When he met Susan at some work conference, she was also recently divorced and I guess they bonded over their shared experiences of being single parents. When they got married after dating for a year, we all moved into our house since it was bigger than Susan's apartment and in a better school district for Larry. The problem started about 2 years after they got married. Susan began pressuring my dad to set up a college fund for Larry. My dad already had one for me that my mom and he had started when I was born. They had been really smart about saving for my future, and by the time Mom passed away, there was already a decent amount in there. Dad kept contributing to it even after Mom died. Susan kept insisting that since they were married now, Larry deserved the same opportunities. She would make comments about how it wasn't fair that I had this safety net while Larry had nothing saved up for college. My dad, probably feeling guilty, agreed and started putting money aside for Larry's college fund too. I went to college right after high school and lived in the dorms, studying computer science. I was doing well in school and had even landed a good internship. I came back home during breaks and summer vacations. Larry was still in high school then, and that's when I started noticing changes in his behavior. During my senior year of college, I noticed that Larry had started hanging out with a different crowd. He would come home late, skip school, and started being really secretive about his phone. He also began dressing in expensive clothes and got a new gaming PC that must have cost thousands. I could tell he was up to something, but I kept my mouth shut because it wasn't my business and I didn't want to create drama in the family. Last month, I graduated and moved back home temporarily while looking for a job in my field. That's when everything went downhill. Larry was supposed to start college this fall at a pretty expensive private university, and Susan went to check his college fund to start making arrangements for his tuition payment. That's when she discovered that almost all the money was gone, around $45,000. Dad had managed to save this much for Larry in just 6 years because he got a promotion at work and had been putting aside a significant portion of his salary. At first, everyone was confused and panicked. Then Larry started crying and told everyone that he had seen me accessing my dad's computer late at night several times when I was home during breaks. He claimed that I must have found the banking information and transferred the money to myself because I was jealous that Dad was helping him too. He said I was probably mad that Dad was spending so much money on his stepson's education. I was completely shocked. I had never touched that money. I had my own college fund and had even gotten a partial scholarship, so I had no reason to steal from Larry. But Larry had put on such a convincing show that even my dad started doubting me. He kept asking me where the money was and saying that he couldn't believe I would do something like this to my own family. Susan was absolutely furious and demanded that I return the money immediately. When I tried to explain that I hadn't taken anything, she completely lost it. She started screaming about how she always knew I resented her and Larry, and how I was trying to sabotage Larry's future. Then she said something that made my blood boil. She said I was just like my mother, taking advantage of my dad's kindness and manipulating him emotionally. That comment about my mom made me lose it. I yelled at her that she had no right to talk about my mother like that my mom was twice the woman she would ever be. My dad actually sided with her and told me that if I didn't return the money, I would have to leave. I tried to tell them that they should check Larry's recent purchases and his new expensive gaming setup that had mysteriously appeared in his room a few months ago. I pointed out how he had been skipping school and hanging out with a new crowd that always seemed to have money to throw around. But they wouldn't listen. Susan accused me of trying to deflect blame and my dad just stood there looking disappointed. I knew right then that Larry had taken the money himself. Over the past year, he had been skipping school and hanging out with people who were into gambling. I had seen him coming home with new clothes, the latest iPhone, expensive sneakers, and that gaming setup, but hadn't thought much about it then. Now it all made sense. He must have been spending the college fund money slowly, probably thinking no one would check the account until it was time for college. But I had no proof. Larry had deleted his browser history and cleared any evidence from his devices. He even showed them his bank account which had very little money in it. What he didn't tell them was that he probably had another account or had spent it all already on gambling and expensive stuff. He had always been good at manipulating situations to his advantage, but I never thought he would go this far. The next day, Susan and my dad gave me an ultimatum: either return the money or leave the house. I packed my bags and left. I'm currently staying with my best friend while looking for a job and an apartment. My dad's side of the family thinks I'm a thief, and only my mom's sister believes me. She knows I would never steal, especially not from family. What hurts the most is that my dad chose to believe Larry over me without any real evidence. Just because Larry put on a good show of crying and playing the victim, everyone automatically assumed I was guilty. The trust that my dad and I built over 25 years just vanished because of Larry's lies. I tried reaching out to my dad's brother to explain my side, but he told me that stealing from family is unforgivable and hung up on me. I know Larry is probably laughing at how easily he managed to frame me for his crime. But I'm not going to let this go. I'm going to find a way to prove my innocence, even if it takes time. For now, I just needed to share this somewhere because keeping it all inside was driving me crazy. Edit: a lot of people have been asking why I didn't file a police report. The thing is, I have no concrete proof that Larry took the money. It would be my word against his, and given how convincingly he has manipulated everyone, I don't think it would help my case. Also, despite everything, I still care about my dad and don't want to make things even more complicated by involving the police. Update 1. It's been 3 weeks since my original post, and things have gotten even more complicated. I managed to find a decent job at a small tech startup. The pay isn't great, but it's enough to cover my basic expenses. I also found a tiny studio apartment in a not-so-great part of town. It's all I can afford right now, but at least it's my own space. The drama with my family, however, has only escalated to new levels. Last week, something unexpected happened. I ran into Larry's ex-girlfriend Amy at the grocery store. I was trying to avoid her, but she spotted me and came over. She asked me why I had stolen Larry's college fund, and I could tell from her tone that she had heard the family's version of events. I was so tired of being judged that I ended up telling her my side of the story right there in the middle of the store. To my complete surprise, she actually believed me. We ended up going to a nearby coffee shop where she told me things about Larry that confirmed my suspicions. According to Amy, Larry had been heavily into gambling during their relationship. He had borrowed money from her multiple times, always with elaborate stories about why he needed it: car repairs, textbooks, family emergencies. He would promise to pay her back but never did. By the time they broke up 6 months ago, he owed her over $3,000. That was a big part of why they broke up, but not the only reason. Amy also revealed something more disturbing. Larry had started hanging out with some really sketchy people who ran an illegal gambling operation from a warehouse on the outskirts of town. She had gone there once with him and seen him losing thousands of dollars in high-stakes poker games. When she confronted him about where he was getting such large amounts of money, he always had excuses: online trading, crypto investments, selling stuff online. She said she had suspected he was stealing from somewhere but couldn't prove it. I asked her if she would be willing to tell all this to my dad and Susan. The look of fear on her face told me everything I needed to know. She explained that when they broke up, Larry had threatened her. He told her if she ever talked about his gambling to anyone, especially his parents, he would make her life miserable. He had already spread nasty rumors about her at their old high school, and she was afraid of what else he might do. She did agree to write down everything she knew in a letter, just in case I needed it later, but made me promise not to use it unless absolutely necessary. The day after I met Amy, Larry somehow found out we had talked. I still don't know how. Maybe he is mutual friends with Amy who saw us at the coffee shop. He showed up at my workplace during my lunch break. I was sitting outside eating when he stormed up to my table. He was furious, his face red with anger. He told me to stay away from Amy or he would make things even worse for me. When I asked him how he could do this to his own stepbrother, he laughed this cold, cruel laugh and said that I was never his brother and that I deserved what happened because I'd always been my dad's favorite. I managed to record part of our conversation on my phone, but the quality isn't great because we were outside. Plus, he never actually admits to taking the money in the recording. He just makes threats about me talking to Amy and says some nasty things about our family situation. I thought about showing the recording to my dad, but I know Larry would just spin it around somehow, probably claim I was harassing him or something. What really got to me was that yesterday, Susan called me out of the blue. For a moment, I actually thought maybe she had figured out the truth. But no, she called to guilt trip me even more. She told me that because of my selfishness, Larry might not be able to go to college this year. Apparently, she and my dad had tried to take out loans to cover his tuition but were having trouble because of their credit scores. She actually had the nerve to ask me to at least return part of the money so Larry could start classes. She talked about how this whole situation was affecting their marriage, as if that was somehow my fault too. I hung up on her mid-sentence and blocked her number. Then my dad called and left a voicemail that made my blood boil. He said he was disappointed in how I was handling this situation and that I needed to grow up and take responsibility for my actions. The kicker was when he said that if I returned even half the money, they wouldn't press charges against me. As if he was doing me some kind of favor by offering not to have me arrested for something I didn't even do. The most infuriating part is that Larry is still playing the victim on social media. He posted this long, dramatic status about how hard it is to see your dreams of college slipping away because of someone else's actions. He wrote about how he had worked so hard to get accepted to his dream school, which is a joke because I know his grades were barely average, and now he might have to give it all up. My cousin shared his post and added her own comment calling me a disgrace to the family. I did some more digging online about the people Larry was gambling with, and what I found scared me. These guys have a pretty bad reputation. There are rumors about them breaking people's bones over unpaid debts. I'm worried that if I expose Larry, he might be in actual danger from these people. Despite everything he's done, I don't want him to get hurt. But I also can't keep living with everyone thinking I'm a thief. My aunt suggested hiring a private investigator to look into Larry's activities, but I had to explain to her that I can barely afford food right now. Most of my first paycheck went to the security deposit and first month's rent for my apartment. I'm stuck in this impossible situation where I either continue being seen as the bad guy or potentially put Larry in danger by exposing the truth. For now, I'm focusing on building my new life and trying to stay strong. I'm picking up extra shifts at work when I can and looking for a side gig to help build up some savings. But it's hard knowing that my own father thinks I'm capable of stealing from my stepbrother. Sometimes I lay awake at night wondering if I'll ever be able to prove my innocence, or if this is just my life now, being the family black sheep because of Larry's lies. Update 2. It's been 2 months since my last update, and everything just exploded in the worst possible way. Remember how I mentioned Larry was involved with some dangerous people? Well, that finally caught up with him, and the truth came out in the most dramatic way possible. Last week, I got a frantic call from my aunt. 2 guys had shown up at my dad's house looking for Larry. They weren't the type of people you want showing up at your door. One had a bunch of face tattoos and the other looked like he bench pressed cars for fun. They were demanding to speak to Larry about the money he owed them. Susan was home alone at the time, and according to my aunt, they started getting aggressive when she said Larry wasn't there. They were shouting about how Larry had been dodging them for months and owed them over $50,000. Susan got scared and called the police. She also called my dad at work, and he rushed home. By the time he got there, the police had already arrived. Here's where it gets interesting. These guys were apparently so mad at Larry that they didn't even try to hide anything. They straight up told the police about their gambling operation and how Larry had been borrowing money for months, promising to pay it back but always losing more instead. The police took their statements and started investigating. They looked into the missing college fund money, and that's when everything unraveled for Larry. Under questioning, he completely broke down. He admitted that he had taken the money from his college fund to pay off his initial gambling debts, but then he started borrowing more money thinking he could win back what he had lost. Instead, he just dug himself deeper into debt. He also confessed to framing me because he thought everyone would believe him over me anyway, since he was the younger one who had been wronged. The worst part was his explanation for why he did it. He said he resented how my dad had this college fund set up for me since I was born, while his fund was started much later. He felt like he deserved that money more than I did because his biological dad had never done anything for him. So in his twisted logic, stealing the money and framing me was some kind of justice. My dad called me yesterday evening. He was a complete mess, crying and apologizing over and over. He said he should have known better, that I would never steal from family, and that he had failed me as a father. He kept saying how he let his guilt over providing more for me than Larry cloud his judgment. He admitted that he had been overcompensating with Larry because he felt bad about having the means to save for my college all those years while Larry had nothing saved up before. Susan hasn't contacted me directly yet, but I heard from my aunt that she's devastated and embarrassed about how she treated me. Apparently, she had a complete breakdown when she found out the truth, especially about her comment comparing me to my mom. My aunt said she's been crying for days and is too ashamed to face me. Larry is in serious trouble now. Not just with those gambling guys, but also legally. My dad and Susan are pressing charges for theft since it was technically my dad's account that Larry stole from. The police are also investigating the gambling operation, and Larry might have to testify against those guys. My dad and Susan are trying to get him into some kind of rehab program for his gambling addiction, hoping that might help reduce any potential charges. The family members who had turned against me are now falling all over themselves trying to apologize. My cousin who shared Larry's post actually showed up at my apartment yesterday with a huge care package, food, gift cards, even a check to help with my rent. I didn't let her in. I just took the package and closed the door. My dad's brother, the one who had hung up on me, has left about 20 voicemails apologizing and begging me to call him back. The thing is, even though the truth is finally out, I don't feel any better. My relationship with my dad is broken, maybe beyond repair. He chose to believe a stepson he had known for a few years over his own son of 25 years. He threw me out of my home and let everyone think I was a thief without even giving me the benefit of the doubt. That's not something you just get over because the truth finally came out. What hurts the most is knowing that if those guys hadn't shown up at the house, everyone would have continued believing Larry's lies. My own father would have gone on thinking I was capable of stealing from my stepbrother. No amount of apologies can erase that knowledge. Update 3. It's been 6 months since everything came out, and I thought I should give one final update since so many people have been messaging me asking how things turned out. A lot has happened, but not all of it in ways people might expect. Larry ended up avoiding jail time after my dad and Susan agreed to drop the charges if he got help. He's been in a rehab facility for the past 4 months dealing with his gambling addiction. Those gambling guys were apparently caught in some other illegal operation involving drugs, so that situation resolved itself. Larry doesn't have to testify against them anymore since they're already facing serious charges. I found out through my aunt that Larry had to defer his college acceptance. The university agreed to hold his spot for a year while he gets treatment, but he'll have to reapply for financial aid. Susan's parents ended up mortgaging their house to help pay off his gambling debts, but they've completely cut contact with our family now. I guess they blame Susan and my dad for not noticing what was happening with Larry sooner. My dad has been trying really hard to rebuild our relationship. He calls every week without fail, sends messages asking about my work, and even showed up at my apartment several times with my favorite takeout food from this Chinese place we used to go to when I was a kid. Last month, he tried to give me a check for $45,000, the exact amount that was in Larry's college fund. I refused to take it. This isn't about the money anymore, and him trying to fix things with money just shows he doesn't understand why I'm still hurt. Every time I think about how quickly he believed I was capable of stealing, it feels like being kicked out all over again. He keeps saying he was blinded by guilt over providing more for me than for Larry, but that's exactly the problem. He was so focused on making things fair for Larry that he completely forgot about being fair to me. Susan sent me a long email apologizing, especially for what she said about my mom. She wrote about how she had always felt insecure about replacing my mom in my dad's life, and how she had projected those insecurities onto me. She said she realizes now that she was so desperate to make Larry equal to me in my dad's eyes that she ended up treating me unfairly. I haven't responded. Maybe someday I will, but right now, I'm not ready. Larry also tried to apologize through social media, sending me long messages about how sorry he is and how the rehab has helped him understand the damage he caused. I blocked him. Some family members think I'm being too harsh, that I should forgive and move on since everything worked out in the end. My cousin even said that this could be a chance to start fresh as a family. But it didn't really work out, did it? I lost my family's trust over something I didn't do, and even though the truth came out, that period of being treated like a criminal by my own family changed me. Those months of being ostracized and blamed, of having my character questioned and my words doubted, that's not something that just goes away because the truth finally came out. I recently accepted a job offer in another state, about 800 miles away. The company is bigger than my current one, with better pay and opportunities for growth. My dad was upset when I told him about the move, but I think it's for the best. I need a fresh start somewhere new, away from all these painful memories. My aunt understands. She said sometimes distance is the only way to heal. I'm moving next month. I haven't told most of the family yet, just my aunt and dad. My aunt is helping me arrange everything, and she's been amazing through all of this. My dad keeps asking if this move is because of what happened, and honestly, it partly is. I need to build a life that isn't defined by this incident or by being Larry's framed stepbrother. Maybe someday I'll be ready to have a relationship with my family again. Maybe the distance will help me process everything and find forgiveness. But right now, I just need to focus on myself and healing from all of this. Sometimes the hardest part of family drama isn't the drama itself, but accepting that things can never go back to how they were before.